Okay guys, this video is about carbon and life. So just a real quick review of carbon. We talked about this a little bit in I think the previous video. Now remember, carbon, our carbon atom over here, has 4 valence electrons. Valence electrons being the electrons in the outermost shell that can be used for bonding. So if we have our carbon atom here, here's our 4 valence electrons. That's not all of its electrons, just the valence electrons, the one that I've drawn. And remember, atoms want to have a full outer shell, and a full outer shell for carbon would be 8, so it can form up to 4 bonds. Generally, carbon will form up to 4 bonds. Now, carbon's so important in life because it's the building block of all the major molecules that are found in living things. We have 4 major macromolecules that are found in living things, and we'll go over those 4. You can see pictures of those 4 right here. We'll go over those 4 in a second, and carbon is the basis of all of them, so it's really, really important. And when you hear people refer to organic molecules, they're generally referring to molecules that make up living things. Something organic is something that's living. So organic molecules are the molecules that make up living things, and carbon is the basis of those organic molecules. So organic molecules generally have lots of carbon and then bond it to hydrogen. So generally organic molecules have lots of carbon-hydrogen bonds in them. And as we'll see with all of these molecules, there's lots of carbon-hydrogen bonds. So the first one we have is carbohydrates. I just put carb here to abbreviate it, but it's carbohydrates, and there's lots of different types of carbohydrates. It's not just one type of molecule, and you can see there's 2 examples of carbohydrates here. We have starch and cellulose. And you find carbohydrates in things I'm sure you know, like candy, like sugar is a carbohydrate, but also things like bread, anything that's starchy, so potatoes have lots of starch in it. Cellulose is a carbohydrate that actually humans cannot digest, and if you think of like a stalk of celery, that would be a good example that has lots of cellulose in it. Some animals can digest cellulose, humans cannot, unfortunately. So also, one thing to notice about carbohydrates are these what seem to be repeating units in the carbohydrate right here, and then we have another one right here, and they're actually all the same. And if you looked at the whole starch molecule, there would just be a bunch of these monomers, or a bunch of these individual repeating units, just one after another, after another, after another. And each of these, if we broke down starch, each of these would be a glucose. This would be by itself. If we took just this part that I've circled or boxed off, that would be glucose. And so that's how a lot of carbohydrates are made. They have these small building blocks, or you can think of it as like a chain, or what you could think of it as like one link of a chain, right? This would be one link of a chain. Then if we link a bunch of them together, we get starch. But if we took just one link of the chain, we would have glucose. Fatty acids. This is what a fatty acid looks like. And when fatty acids come together, they make lipids. So when multiple fatty acids bond together, they make lipids. And lipid is just another word for fat. When we think of fat, we're thinking of lipids. So fats are really important because everyone needs them. We need them for insulation. We need them inside of us to provide padding between our organs and lots of other stuff. We need them, all of our cell membranes have a phospholipid bilayer, so we need fat for all of our cell membranes. Fat's a very important macronutrient. And going back to carbohydrates, I don't know if I said this, but carbohydrates, one of the main functions of carbohydrates in our body is for fuel, is for energy. That's where we get a lot of our energy from, is from carbohydrates. Moving on down here, we have protein. I think I spelled that right. I think it's EI. We have protein. So these are 2 examples of proteins. Each one of these is, well, actually this is not a protein. This is an amino acid, and that's probably a familiar word to you guys. So each of these is an amino acid. And when we bond these together, a protein is just lots of amino acids bonded together. So just like we talked up here about these repeating units In a carbohydrate, that each of these would be a glucose molecule by itself, and when they bond together we call it starch. Proteins, the building blocks of proteins, are amino acids, and these are two examples of amino acids. So if you had a complete protein, a whole protein would be hundreds, most of them are hundreds of these amino acids that are all bonded together. They're bonded into a long chain, and then they kind of fold up and they take a shape and they become a protein. And then proteins, we know muscles, there's a lot of protein in muscle, and then we can also use it for some energy if we don't have enough carbohydrates. Proteins use in all kinds of functions. All your muscles are made from proteins, your tendons, your ligaments. It helps connect, so it helps connect things. All the enzymes in your body, so all the chemical reactions in your body we need protein for. And then this last one over here is a nucleic acid. Nucleic acid. Sorry if my handwriting is still bad. I downloaded a new screencasting program, and it's better. I'm still getting used to it though. So this is a nucleic acid. A nucleic acid, again, this would be like a single unit called a nucleic acid, and then if we bond a bunch of these together, just like we said we did for carbohydrates, and the amino acids bind together to make proteins, if we bond together lots of nucleic acids, we get DNA or RNA, and that's called a nucleotide. So nucleic acids are the building blocks for nucleotides. And I think if we remember from middle school science, the role of nucleotides, so the role of DNA especially, is to pass on genetic information, right? All of our cells in their nucleus, they have DNA, and that's where all of our genes and hereditary information is stored. And they're built from what's called nucleic acids.